As many of you know, we do this on a regular basis. We really do believe, I believe, if you're going to represent people, you got to listen to people, you got to have the conversation. So that's why we try to get out there, and I just appreciate you guys taking time on a Saturday to come and spend a little of your free time with us. Thank you to our mayor and our supervisor for opening up.
And the county legislators.
And the county legislature.
So we got
Thank you, Bill.
4 of the 5 levels of government here.
Correct.
We'll forward anything onto the state guys if we need to, but anything else we can handle.
So I'll take all the easy questions. We'll give the supervisor and the mayor the hard questions. All the answers. But thank you to the town, because this is the town hall facility. So we appreciate you opening up, and thank you, Mayor, for hosting us in the community.
You're welcome. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, so I'm glad to be here. And what we do, and many of you know, we kind of go by some written questions, but this is a smaller group, so by no means are we going to just limit it to written questions. But one thing we found in the beginning when we started doing these is 126th. You just reminded me 125th. In the beginning, if we didn't do the written questions, we tended to get bogged down in 1 or 2 people talking about 1 or 2 issues. And I tell you, I had a gentleman come up and talk to me early on. It was just like, you know, I drove 60 miles to come here, and we didn't even talk about what I wanted to talk about. So this allows us to do that, covers as many topics as possible, but also if we run out of time, because we have to get to the next town hall meeting, we have the ability to communicate with you. So anyway, a little update from maybe Washington, D.C. I just returned home on Wednesday. Come on in, plenty of room. Just returned home on Wednesday. I go back and forth. I don't know if you all know that, but my family lives in Corning. Same house I grew up in, same house my grandpa built back in 1924. So this is home. And so I go right down 15, right down past Gettysburg. We're going down and coming back every week, which I appreciate. And coming out here and listening to people, bringing the common sense mentality is what I'm trying to do, bring your voice to Washington. And so I appreciate that partnership and working with us to do that. So last Wednesday, a couple things maybe to update people on. One, the Farm Bill. That's a few weeks ago, but we got the Farm Bill done, signed into law. So we got a 5-year Farm Bill now, which I think is a good step in the right direction. Did some reforms on dairy, some specialty crop initiatives, some crop insurance reforms. And biggest thing I was looking for there was the 5-year component of it. Because now you got 5 years that farmers and agricultural folks will have a better understanding as to what the policy out of Washington is. That gives the ability to plan like we haven't seen before. There was a lot of Band-Aid, short-term type of mechanisms put in place. So hopefully that will help in that regard. And we can talk, I don't know if any questions will come up, but we can get into the details, whatever details you want to get into. On the food stamp side of the Farm Bill, we did do some reforms there. We did some areas that I think needed to be done in order to make sure the resource got to the people that needed it the most, rather than what we were seeing is a blossoming program that was just getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And we have $18 trillion worth of national debt, essentially, just $17.3 trillion. We have to get this spending under control out of Washington. So we made some steps in the right direction. There were some reforms that we're going to continue to advocate for on the food stamp program and other social welfare programs out of Washington. Those are the work requirements and work reforms, because I really do believe if when we have these programs, we should have a philosophy, a policy of teaching people how to fish, not just giving them a fish.
Yes.
And so we're definitely, you know, in that work requirement of the food stamp bill, that scored was about $39 billion total of savings under the original Farm Bill that was proposed. Hi, come on in. How are you? Good to see you. And so about $20 billion of that $39 billion was essentially for that work requirement that would say people either get a job, have to get a job, they either have to get a degree or a certificate of some type of workforce type of skill set, or even volunteering in their community would meet that work requirement. And it was only for folks that were able-bodied without kids. So we're not talking about parents, we're not talking about people that have children. This is about really focusing on ways to try to retool folks and get them back on their own 2 feet and empower them going forward. That didn't make it to the finish line. What did make it to the finish line were some reforms in what they call automatic qualification. We're getting in kind of the weeds here, but essentially what it was doing is if you qualified for one program, in this situation, low-income heating assistance, LIHEAP, and you received $1 of LIHEAP funding, you automatically qualified for food stamp. And what was happening is a lot of people were qualifying for food stamps that didn't meet the criteria, but for that $1 that folks got under LIHEAP. It was a way that some of the states too were gaming the system, in my opinion, that were leading to abuses and using that resource inappropriately. So we made some reforms, we made some steps, we're going down the right direction. The other things that you may be aware of, or just to give you an update on, we did take care of last week the debt ceiling situation. I voted no on that debt ceiling relief bill. And the reason why, and just so we're all clear, I am not going to be part of the status quo in Washington. We have a debt crisis, a $17.3 trillion debt crisis that needs to be addressed. And I will be a partner, and we've demonstrated this with our voting record. I will be a partner. If we're making steps in the right direction, we'll join in those efforts and support that type of relief. But if all we're going to do is just do a clean debt ceiling like we did last week, that's not why I'm there. We got to fix this problem and get it under control. And we'll continue to move forward on that front. The other item that we did take care of last week that maybe is of interest to some folks in the room, the military veteran or the military retirement COLA cut that went into effect in the budget agreement that we support. I supported the budget agreement, but one of the things I was really concerned about is we had done a reduction to military retirees and their calculation for their retirement by way of a COLA adjustment. So we kind of essentially put them onto the in the firing range, if you would. Following that budget vote that I supported, I made an effort and I was committed to getting that taken care of and put back into place. And we first started with the disabled vets, got that taken care of, and then just last week we took care of all the vets so that they're taken care of. That's something, just so you know how I operate. I'm the son of a career Army veteran, 20 years, World War II and Korea. You know, it's something I've been taught since I was a little kid. We stand with our guys. We stand with our men and women in the U.S. Armed Services. So we'll continue on to those fights. The last issue that I'm sure we'll talk about, but you know, we have to focus, I think, as a nation and make a priority of how we're going to create a healthy economy and get people back to work. And that doesn't just necessarily mean how we're going to put them into a government job. I'm very interested in figuring out how we're going to get them in a private sector-based job.
Yes.
And I'll tell you, some optimism to give you some good news. I really do believe we're right at the cusp of a U.S. manufacturing renaissance, where we're going to repower and put American manufacturing back into the forefront and make it really that vibrant economy where we build it here and sell it there. I co-chair the U.S. Manufacturing Caucus, the U.S. Natural Gas Caucus. It's a bipartisan group, both sides of the aisle. That natural gas, that energy that we're finding in America right now, and I know there's issues people have of it in New York State, however you feel about it, North American-wise, it's happening, it's developing, and it's putting us in that position to really reignite our manufacturing base, and very interested in supporting that type of growth opportunities for Americans. So with that, let's open it up to some written questions.
Questions here, and again, thank you to the town for having us begin to use that host, and obviously we're in the village, so thanks to the mayor as well.
I told you, you're going to be on all the airways. Here they come, right here.
Oh,
Time
Be
Warner.
news.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
So we've got so many questions in. First one I want to talk to, Gail submitted quite a few questions actually. She has a lot of concerns. Most of them have to do with, just to put them together, the size of government. That the president's overreaching with executive orders, that there's been targeting the IRS, and the NSA issue, Benghazi, you can see some of them here.
Okay.
I don't know if Gail wanted to have any that she was particularly more concerned about. No, there you are. Yeah. So
Yeah, hi, Gail.
she had
Good
put a
to
lot
see
of
you.
thought into it, and obviously we'll deal with as many of them as we can. But she seems to be overall concerned that the government's too big, doing things it shouldn't be doing under the Constitution, and the president's taking inappropriate actions. Would that be correct? Is sort of the thrust of your concerns?
That's correct. There are some specific issues that I'm concerned about, but it's generally the size of the government and the overspending. That seems to be a huge issue in our country. And I also feel that as a conservative, we're often not represented, and which is unfortunate because I feel like we're heading towards a socialist state rather than a democracy. And that's just not the America that I grew up in, and I'd like to see it come back. You know, It's pretty sad to see the things that are happening in our country, you know, trying to take away the Second Amendment rights and those types of things. So, but I do appreciate the fact that you are generally considered a conservative yourself, and I'm glad to hear you say in your opening remarks all the positive things that you are supporting and that you're willing to stand up to the big government. And I really thank you for that.
Well, thanks, Gail, and I appreciate you taking the time, and we'll go through these one by one when maybe we'll respond. We'll start at correspondence, because you cover a lot of areas here. But your general sentiment, I think we're going to find we're in broad agreement on. You know, take the Second Amendment. It's an individual fundamental right. I'm going to stand to defend it. It's one of our civil liberties, and you know what they did in New York State, I think at the state level with the SAFE Act, deplorable. Passing in the middle of the night, how they had ran that through. We are opposed to that, but that's a state issue, obviously. But we're going to continue to protect the Second Amendment rights down in Washington. And the overall sentiment of this government, kind of going beyond its constitutional-based limited government, we've been focused on that, and we're going to continue focused on that, because I do see a government that's out of control. That needs to be reined in, that needs to be brought into much more of its limited original design, if you would. And you touch upon the debt crisis and the spending and the issues there. One thing, because there was a recent CBO report that got a lot of attention. It dealt with the Affordable Care Act and Obamacare and all that. But there was another CBO report that I just want to bring to everyone's attention and use this information for whatever you would like to. On the handout, I think it's like the second or third page. I feel like I'm in a classroom. I don't mean to feel like that, but right there, this one. This sheet right
Everybody did
here.
their homework.
Yeah. Can anybody tell me what this is right here? This comes out of a Congressional Budget Office report, and it's a way that I think CNN actually may have depicted it in this chart, but the data is from the Congressional Budget Office. Interesting, eh? Yeah. So what this is the Congressional Budget Office, for those who don't know, it's kind of the referees. They're the independent scorekeepers, if you were, out of Washington. And so this data shows that by 2024, the interest payment on our debt is $880 billion. And these are very conservative numbers that they're, the assumptions they use to get there are very...
Is that annual?
Annual. Annual payment, $880 billion. So can anybody, this is one of the things that a lot of things keep me up at night, but this is one of the things that does that. Can anybody, just why that would be of concern? Yeah, please.
Several months ago, you had an article in the paper about the debt, and you broke it down like a credit card.
Yeah, we did.
And I can understand why, especially the Republicans and some Democrats, don't even worry about it. I mean, if you got a credit card and you spend, that's it. You spend over your limit, you can't spend anymore. Break it down to every person, this is what you owe on the national credit card, you know. You're $150,000 in debt. You know, or whatever the figure.
It's about 56,000.
You know.
53 to 56,000, depending
You
on
know,
what's meant.
and then people start understanding it, you know, the way you broke it down, but I've never seen it in the paper before or since.
Yeah. Well, and that's where I think, that's why I wanted to take some time on it, because it's important to put it in context, to put it into day-to-day context. And I think this report does that, because when we look at the pie chart of the federal spending that we do every year, I mean, this is 2012, we're updating the numbers to 13, we're just confirming. We spend about $3.6 trillion every year in our federal coffers. And if you look at where the money goes, this is where it goes. This little piece up here is, we're spending about $223 billion in 2012, $230 billion in 2013, plus or minus there, when they fine tune it. That's just the interest on the debt, right? So if it gets up to $880 billion, which it's projected to go, just to put that in perspective, all of defense in 2012, we spent $670 billion, right? So all of Social Security, $768 billion. So when you have to come up with $880 billion, what are you going to take it from? Where are you going to get it? You're going to shut down all of defense? You're gonna shut down Social Security? Or are you gonna try to take it from each one of these pieces? And if you do that, what's gonna get whacked? I mean, you're gonna have some structural shocks to the system, if you would. So that keeps me up, because if we don't get this debt under a manageable path, that's where we're going. So what are the solutions? The solutions, to me, is we've made some great steps. I mean, what we've done over the last 3 years in regards to getting discretionary spending under control, that's what the budget agreement primarily dealt with. That 2-year budget agreement that Patty Murray and Paul Ryan put together, it really only deals with very limited piece of the federal government spending. It's kind of this area, if you would, generally speaking. The other areas, the mandatory and auto spending and the entitlement programs, they're really not been subject to this kind of scrutiny. The discretionary spending lines have come down. We have reduced the spending in the discretionary lines significantly by tens of billions of dollars, and that's going the right way. But if you don't get into the other areas of the pie, you're just not being serious about the issue. The rest of the solution is going to come on the other side of the equation, on the revenue side. To grow revenue, you get people back to work, the healthy economy. Not only are you really solving some core problems of America, you're solving this debt crisis because you got more people contributing, and you also got less people drawing off the system. So to me, that's the solution. Healthy economy, get this thing back in order. Yeah, sure.
Would a result of that also be we'll be heading towards double-digit inflation?
That's a great concern, and that's because there's another way to solve this problem with the $880 billion is you inflate the currency, and you see what the Fed's doing, you see what the quantitative easing policies are doing. You inflate it, and you have massive inflation. So yeah, you could pay it off, and we'll all be millionaires. I guess that's the good news. But you're going to be needing $1 million to buy a loaf of bread. You know, it's that value of the dollar that is of concern. And you know, there are some people, just so you understand the counter argument, because we talk with everybody in Washington and we try to understand what we're missing, where we're coming from. They will tell you, well, this debt is irrelevant. You know, it really does. You don't have to worry about it. It's not like a credit card account and things like that. And what they're essentially saying, well, it's debt to ourselves, first of all, to a large degree. And that's, every year that goes by, it's less and less. More and more foreigners are holding our debt, so it becomes more and more of a problem. But also, they're of the mindset, too, where are people going to go? America's the only show in town in the world. It's a very dangerous, arrogant position to take. And they're just like, well, we can just keep doing it, and we just reprint it. And that's where you saw guys like Jerry Nadler, who came up with the solution to the debt problem with the $1 trillion coin. You might have seen that recently. You're just like, we'll just print a bunch of these coins, 18 of them, and there you go. If you think that works, and the mindset is, well, that works. It takes care of the debt. It pays it off. I mean, it's unbelievable that, and Jerry's a New Yorker. He's a member of Congress, you know, and he will tell you, well, that will take care of it. I'm like, to me, that's dangerous. I disagree with that philosophy, and we'll continue to fight it. So back to Gail's original question about the Constitution. That's what we're trying to get to. Yeah, sir?
Then why do we give money to countries like Pakistan that can cut off our border, our army supplies to Afghanistan? They don't like us to begin with. We give them all this money, and they can cut us off at any time.
Well, you raise a very good point and a fair point. Now, a lot of elected officials would come in front of you and say, you're right, this is what we're going to do. We're going to cut all the waste, fraud, and abuse, and we're going to stop the foreign aid. And then our debt problem will go away. First of all, just so we're on the same page, I agree with you that our foreign aid lines need to be reduced. We need to spend less on regards to giving to other countries. We're never going to get to zero. I'm not one of those individuals who believes that that's the case, because there are certain foreign aid relationships that I'm supportive of, and there's a return on that investment, if you would. State of Israel being the best example.
Yes.
Very supportive of the State of Israel, and will remain supportive of the State of Israel because of the relationship, the ally, and where they're at in the world and everything else. But, so we got to come at it from a realistic and honest position on it. Cutting foreign aid, all the waste, fraud, and abuse is not going to bridge this problem and solve the problem. It's bigger than that. And so I'm with you. in regards to reducing it, but we need to be realistic and honest with each other and say that's just a step in the right direction. And we did a lot of work on what we're calling the honest proposal, sent it to the White House, and I said, let's deal with this debt over a structured multi-year process. The first step will be kind of reductions in the easy areas, if you would. To me, foreign aid, I think, would be an easier area because it's not as politically sensitive in regards to, I don't hear a lot of people jumping up and down and saying we need to defend foreign aid for countries like Pakistan, China, for Pete's sakes. Why we're giving foreign aid to China makes no sense to me, but we do. And then there was areas of waste, fraud, and abuse that we should be able to agree on real quick. So that was the first step of our honest proposal. Let's agree here, we'll cut some waste, we'll cut some foreign aid, and we'll guarantee you votes on tax reform or entitlement reform. Just votes. Just so the Senate and the House go on record on these proposals, and in exchange for that, we'll relieve the debt ceiling. And it was a multi-year type of approach to it. I haven't heard anything back from the White House. Sent now 10 letters to the White House and trying to get a response, but anyway. So that's where I think we have to go. Those are the kind of conversations we need to have. Yeah.
What are your views on the Affordable Health Care Act, and how do you stop big business or any business in general from passing off their health care costs to the government?
Yeah. Well, I think, first of all, where we're at on the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, we've voted to repeal it many a times. I'll continue to fight to repeal it. But the reality of the situation is, give President Obama his due. As he told us when he came up to lunch with us, he's like, elections have consequences. He's in the White House. So if we think that some point in time he's magically going to get up and say, you know what, I was wrong, I'm going to repeal it, he's made it clear to us he's not going to do it. And I think he's made it clear to the country he's not going to do it. So what do we do in the meantime? We have to deal with this thing. And we're seeing the train wreck that's coming down the tracks, if not already here, that Max Baucus, chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, talked about. He helped write the law. He's like, this is a train wreck coming into existence. We're seeing it all over. We're seeing increased premium. We're seeing cancellation notices. We are seeing some real life consequences to it. So then your question is, are employers going to dump people as a result of that train wreck into the government-sponsored health care? And is that something we can avoid? I'm hoping we can. I'm a firm believer in employer-sponsored health care. I think that's a good policy. That's what people are grown accustomed to in America. And how do you prevent that from happening? A couple different things I think we could focus on where there's broad agreement. How do we contain the cost of health care so that employers can absorb those costs of health insurance premiums that they're now being presented with? So there's a lot of things. What do you think? You tell me.
I was really just going to see what your opinion was on the changes and what you would suggest besides the Affordable Health Care Act.
Yeah. What I would be interested in doing, there's areas on the Affordable Care Act that I think we can agree on. In health insurance reforms in particular, pre-existing condition, 26-year-olds being carried on their parents' policies. So if we can at least, let's agree there and repeal the rest. And maybe there's an opportunity to us to explore. And when we do the replacement, if you would, a replacement package of the legislation, how can we contain costs of healthcare in America? And some things I would offer for you to consider that maybe I can see. Because there's really only two tools when you boil it all down, in my humble opinion. You either got government control and government mandate, or you have market pressure, and using that to our advantage. And so I'm going to be in the market pressure, essentially, camp over here. And so how can you deploy market pressures to drive these costs down? A couple different things I'd offer to you. Maybe completely getting us off a fee-for-service based system and starting with Medicare and Medicaid, because we're already in that healthcare arena, rather than mandating it on all healthcare providers across America, and do things like a capitated payment model. What that means is, rather than rewarding people for the services that they provide, and the more services you provide, the more you get paid, we would say under Medicare and Medicaid, we're going to reward you by, here's one payment. So when you go to the doctor's office, it's a whole capitated payment. It's $100 for you coming in for a sore throat. Not you coming in and saying, okay, you came in for a sore throat, so I'm going to bill you for a cotton ball, I'm going to bill you for an aspirin, I'm going to bill you for, and the more services I provide, the more I get paid. Now the trick on that system that we gotta keep an eye on is you don't want to incentivize people to cut corners when they provide that care. So you got to have the quality metrics in the care when you do that capitated model. You got to make sure that doctors are not providing the aspirin when aspirin is needed, and somehow measure that. But again, doing it off of Medicare and Medicaid, not mandating it across the country in one size fits all, kind of what the Affordable Care Act does. Yeah.
Thank you. I was wondering, I'm very much adamantly opposed to Obamacare, and I would love to see it repealed in the grandest sense of the word, but let's take the best case scenario. Let's suppose in 2016, we have a Republican president who wants to repeal it, and we also have a Republican Senate and a House that is able to, so everybody's on board. But at that point, I'm imagining that several million people will have been signed up to it, so it's already grown into a giant snowball going down the hill. As of right now, it's 3 million. So by then, I'm imagining it's going to be much larger. So at that point, isn't it repealing it going to just create another big mess, like implementing it was? You know what I'm saying? So, and again, I would love to have it repealed right now, but at that point, and I don't think it was a coincidence, it'll have grown into such a monstrosity that the attempt to just completely repeal it at that point seems to me almost to be as big of a mess. So what's the answer? Can we reform it at that point so that it is the way that you said it is? What is the answer?
I'm always going to be the eternal optimist, and I think there's going to be opportunities then, but also between now and then. Because as this thing starts to roll out and more Americans feel, well, we've been talking about this is a real problem and you're going to start feeling this, Americans are going to demand that we do something about it. You know, there's another school of thought that's out there, that some people think that this has been done for the purposes of getting us to a single-payer healthcare system. And if everyone knows what we're talking about, that's complete government-run, government-mandated. My opponent is a single-payer advocate. Maybe Martha right now. And I understand where the philosophy comes from. And again, it's those two tools. It's government control, government mandate. You know, Martha says that we should control it through the government. You know, we got to try to look at market opportunities to put pressure on folks to reward them for good practices, if you would. So I think there's going to be opportunities between now and then. Now the president, this is the problem though, the president using his executive authority and the pen and making it clear that he doesn't want to talk to us about making these changes, I don't think he's there yet. At some point in time, that authority that he's trying to use, it's not going to work. I mean, I've already talked to, for example, providers and insurance carriers saying, yeah, it's great he gave a speech, but a speech doesn't defend me in a lawsuit. A executive order that was illegally issued doesn't give me protection in front of a jury that's going to hold me accountable to what the law says. And they're starting, and what they mean by that is that, absent us legislatively changing this, they're going to start making decisions, say, we're going to just follow the law. We appreciate you giving us the pat on the back and the relief and the speech, but this is the reality and this is where we're at. Now there's a reason, too, that we should all be concerned about, that he's taken the executive order and he's extending these things past elections.
Right.
That to me spoke volumes of the first time it went past the 2012 election, and now we're dealing with it past the midterm elections, and it may even get pushed out past 2016, but you can't do that indefinitely.
Sure.
The thing's coming to be raised. Yeah. And then we'll get to another couple of questions.
Tom,
We got a couple more, bro.
you
Good luck.
mentioned the pen.
Yeah.
Do you believe the president has the right to rewrite law and not enforce the law in the books, which he took an oath to do when he took office?
I have expressed, and I will continue to express, what the president is doing here is using executive authority beyond something we've seen before. I think this is something that is problematic. We're going to keep holding them accountable, put a spotlight on it. And one of the best arguments that we've used in D.C. On this front that I think resonates with people, we've gone to the other side. We have a reputation, again, of talking with everybody. And said, he's not going to be president forever. And there may become a president that you don't agree with. But once this power is on the books, very difficult to pull that power back. So you may like what he's doing, you may think he should be doing it, and we should be applauding it, but there is a system in place that our founding fathers, with that checks and balance program that our government, the American government, they put together. It's there for a reason, and it's served us very well for hundreds of years. And once that gets chipped away at the corners and chipped in the core, that's a problem.
But why isn't Congress doing the check and balance now? Why are they just saying, oh, it'll stop? In other words, it is the responsibility of the three governments to
Yeah.
keep a check and balance on each other.
And we are.
And
Yeah.
what is being done in reference to that?
Well, first, the biggest tool we have is the spotlight. We're not letting him get away, allow him to sign these orders and not raise it up. That's why we're talking about it. That's why it's on everyone's radar, because we're watching what he's doing. And we're telling people, this is what's going on. So that's critical, because where the ultimate solution on this issue is going to come from is from the people. You know, it's from us, standing up saying, whoa, 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 too far, too great. The other thing, we are challenging certain of the actions. I mean, you saw the appointments, the midnight appointments at the NLRB and things like that, where he was doing these recess appointments that were going through court and going through the court process, because we do have that check over there in the judicial branch. And we're going to continue to use that as a tool. We're using the funding sources as an opportunity to say, hey, look, if you're going way too far in the EPA, for example, we're going to use the power of the purse to try to rein you in. Now, DC has been creative over the last many years to work around that, and they come up with ways to get the spending into mandatory spending, automatic spending, and things like that. So that's what we're trying to do, and we're going to continue to do it, but it's very difficult, especially when you got a Senate. You know, we have 160 bills over there that they haven't taken up for a vote. Very difficult when we're there. But we just got to stay on it as the train goes by.
Train's going through. So a couple of the topics and the written questions we've discussed, want to see if there's anything you want to elaborate on. I believe it's, if I'm reading right, it's Lonnie. We talked about the Second Amendment, your support of the Second Amendment, and points out that repeal of the New York SAFE Act would save $36 million. I'm assuming that's referring to administrative costs, so trying to enforce that legislation.
Como has put up $36 million to put this act in place. Okay. It's against our Second, Fourth, Fifth, 14th Amendment rights. It's against New York civil law. And it's also against Article 12 of the New York State Constitution. And nothing is getting done about it.
Yeah.
And we're already gun hunters. When we go get a deer license, we've already had a background check. Why do we have to show our license or get another background check to get ammunition?
Well, and this is where we're going to agree. What they're doing on the SAFE Act in Albany is wrong. We're going to work with you, stand with you to repeal it. I know there's a lot of groups that are organizing and we're very well functioning in regards to making sure that this doesn't get off the radar of Albany like they want it to. I think there's a lot of folks who want this to go away. And we'll continue to stand with you to do it. The other part of this debate that I get very frustrated on is because they use the debate as part of, you know why, I mean, it came off the shootings in Connecticut and Colorado and everything. There's not a soul in our district, across the country that I've come across that says, we're defending this right so that people could do those horrific things. That's not what we're talking about. And one of the things that frustrates me in this debate is that, what is the common denominator in each and every one of those equations? It's the person's mindset behind the weapon that really, because I mean, a gun it's an object. It takes somebody to mentally think that that's somehow the right path to go. And I'll tell you, we've met with parents of victims that have lost in gun violence. I mean, your heart, it touches you. I mean, it really does, and it's painful to experience that. But at the same time, banning the gun is not going to solve the problem. We should be using the opportunity to take the debate and say, you know what? How are we going to help in the mental health arena? How are we going to deal with that issue? How are we going to get to the points where we're dealing with that individual behind a gun in a way that's, as a psychologist once told me, the individual was thinking he was doing the people a favor by committing that act because the world was so bad and so egregious and there was no hope. He was just taking care of it, and he should be thanked for making that decision and committing that horrific act. That mindset has to be spotlight. We need to improve our mental health delivery in America. And I get really frustrated on it because I have parents that come in and, for lack of a better term, they're being utilized to carry a debate that's not getting to the solution. And we should find an area that we can agree on in that front. So I offer that as a side thought.
I'd just like to say a couple more things. A gun is a tool, just like a hammer is to a carpenter. If I hit you in the head with a hammer, then it is a weapon.
Absolutely.
If you take away our civil rights to give us security, sooner or later, we're gonna end up with neither. And that is a quote from Benjamin Franklin.
Benjamin Franklin. And there's going to be some areas like, for example, someone who uses a weapon in regards to a drug crime. I'll be a supporter, and I have been a supporter of federal, the three strikes, the impact laws, where you use a gun and you're committing a crime like that, go to jail. You lose your right. You abused it, you violated it, you used a weapon like that. Those types of penalties, I think, is something, if you really want to go down the issue of regulating guns, there could be some common ground in regards to that. But really, let's try to focus on that issue at hand, which is the mental health component that has caused the fundamental cause of the problem.
The other thing, the one thing I've seen with the mental health thing is the states don't want to have anything to do with it anymore, and they're decreasing, the mental hospitals and everything else. We just went through the
Psych center,
one
we were
right
down
there in
there.
St. Joseph's down here, which would have forced everybody to go either to Syracuse or Buffalo.
Yeah, and when you talk with folks down in the city, like we did during that process, like, well, what's the big deal? You just get on the subway another stop. I'm like, you've never been to Western New York. You've never. That's a 2-hour drive. It's not a bus stop. It's not a thing. No, and so it sends a conflicting message. You're concerned about mental health, but yet you're going to cut those types of mental health services.
I saw the same thing in Connecticut. I lived up there right near, within 10 miles of a very large facility. And what they did was they shut down 90% of the facility, and the ones that were there, they just put them on a bus, and when they got to the end of the bus line, they got off, and they were stuck in the town.
And out of sight, out of mind. And one of the things that I think this happens as a result of, because it's hard to deal with this issue. I mean, you start the debate, start talking about the mental health debate in America. So now you're going to be talking, how do you identify an individual that has a mental health condition? How do you deal with that individual in regards to, making sure that someone can't be mislabeled? They still have due process rights. They still have an opportunity to defend themselves. All of those issues are real legitimate privacy issues and civil liberty type issues, and it's very difficult, especially, there's still a component, I believe, my humble opinion in America, where people look at mental health as not a medical condition, that it's just one of the gentlemen that we were having this debate with said, well, those people, they're different. I had a school superintendent say that at a meeting recently. That type of mindset has to change. I mean, I believe mental health is like a medical condition, that, if you have mental health illness, it's just like having tuberculosis. You have a medical condition that needs to be treated, it needs to be cured, it needs to be addressed. Just like, and that's probably the best analogy I could offer you. Would we allow someone in our society who's got tuberculosis to just walk up and down the streets and not try to get them, some type of treatment, especially tuberculosis, which infects people as they're walking around? You would identify the problem, you would have mechanisms to address it and deal with it. But that's why I think we don't get into this issue, because it's too difficult. It's too hard. The gun's an easier, doesn't speak back.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, right, Mayor.
Now, if the president keeps going the way he is and using his powers to, I'll say, sidestep the Constitution, for lack of a better term, are there processes in place that possibly Congress would consider impeachment, and also, what do we have to do on, say, my level and even your level to take this country back? So it's we the people, not me the president.
We have to do what we're doing today. Come out on a Saturday and get together as a group, to discuss these issues, understand what's going on, and then when we leave here, don't just go quietly out the door and say, okay, everything's taken care of. That's just the beginning. And then as we go into elections, as the president said, elections have consequences. I mean, we have to get out there, and it's all part of the election process. And if this is the America that we're willing to accept, well then, shame on us, and if we do nothing. If it's something we want to fight for, get engaged, participate, and like you do. I mean, you're stepping up at the local level. I mean, one of the biggest problems we face in the district, and our new supervisor here in the town of Addison, is to get people to run. I mean, I'll tell you, I mean, there's a lot of folks that, they look at me and they're like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And like some mornings I get up, or some nights I'm like, oh man, I don't know. But I believe in what we're doing, and we're going to continue to believe in what we're doing, and I think we're making some headway, and we're going to keep on it. But I'll tell you, you know, you got a camera on you 24/7. Everything we do. I mean, you know, it's on the internet immediately, and I actually don't take that much offense to that. Because it's holding me accountable. That's why I do these town halls. We should hold our elected officials accountable and force them to have the town halls. You know, have our opponent go on record and tell us what her positions are. You know, one of the best examples of these town halls I can offer you is we had early on, we were debating, I think it was a banking bill, and there was something in there. And I'm talking about the bill and my understanding of it, and all of a sudden in the back of the room, there's about 120 some people there. The gentleman speaks up and he goes, yeah, but Tom, section 1234 says this. And what he was doing is he was on the internet and he was pulling the bill up. That was holding me accountable because I go, yeah, you're absolutely right. I forgot about that section. That's where we need to have the dialogue. That's where we need to stand together and just hold elected officials accountable, hold yourself accountable, and keep going from there. And you know, are there efforts afoot in order to rein the president in and check? Yeah, there are a lot of people that are stepping up across the country and saying, this isn't what we wanted, this isn't what we signed up for. But it's not going to be done in 6 months. It's not going to be, you know, repealed in 30 days or, you know, 24 hours. It's a process. All right, let's get the written question done.
Yeah, we got two more. Arnold expressed three concerns, two of which we touched on to some degree, which was the farm bill and foreign money distribution. I'm guessing it's foreign aid. But one that hasn't come up at this meeting, but usually comes up, is naturalization of illegal immigrants. So immigration reform, illegal immigration. That was the one topic on Arnold's sheet that we hadn't talked about at all. But,
That's you? Well, I'll give you my principle, maybe, as to where we're at, and then we'll have some input.
Well,
Go ahead.
I don't have a solution.
You don't have a solution? Well, we need a solution. I mean, first of all, I will tell you, the immigration, no. I am focused on the economy, getting people back to work. That's priority number one. But a lot of people have started to talk about immigration. This really kind of, over the last 6 months, 8 months, kind of came up on the radar real quick, especially over the last summer. I mean, nobody was talking about this in DC, and then all of a sudden, we went home, and then like a week later, I'm back in DC, and all of a sudden, it's like moving forward like a freight train. I don't think we're there any longer. I think because we're moving into the election season, I think that there's a kind of a, I don't want to say a push, but just the way it's happening, that down in DC this is becoming a political issue and it's not going to get resolved in 2014. That being said, I think they're looking to have it as part of the election season so that we're discussing it and coming up with a solution for it. So my 2 cents on it, I don't support amnesty. I don't think that's the right path to resolve this. Because if you look at history, back in 1986, the last time they did comprehensive immigration reform, they promised, you know, Ronald Reagan, you know, we'll do it once and it will forever be fixed. Fast forward 2014, now we got 11 million folks here that are here illegally. So, you know, we've got to make sure we get this right and get it done once and for all. And amnesty, to me, is not that path. Now, are there other things that we can consider? For example, legal status. I offer that, not citizenship, but legal status. Somehow recognizing that if you came here illegally as one of those 11 million individuals, there's a penalty to have to be paid. And one of the penalties that you'll forever have to pay is not becoming a citizen. But we will give you legal status so that you can stay here legally, you can participate, you can contribute, you can get a job, you can do all those things, but you won't get a citizenship status. Now your kids who came here with you, the ones that didn't have anything to do with that, I'm open to saying, okay, maybe there's a path for those individuals to become citizens as they mature and age up. So I'm open to that. Why is that important? Why is that something that's not amnesty? Because sometimes folks throw that back at me and say, well, you're just talking about amnesty under a different term. It's really not, in my opinion. It's different. Because you're not getting all the protections of the citizenship and everything else that's affiliated with it. And second, it recognizes a fundamental fairness argument that's, I think, part of our American upbringing. Because all of the folks who came here legally, and this, we've had numerous conversations with legal immigrants as well as illegal immigrants, and they will tell you, as we just had another gentleman at the last meeting come up, he's like, I have filled out all the forms, I have paid thousands of dollars, and I went through the right process, and what I'm seeing is you're going to grant that same relief to someone who didn't follow the rules. How is that fair to me as one who followed the rules? So there needs to be that penalty there. And the funny little secret, when we talk to a lot of illegal immigrants, and we've had them in the office, and we've talked with folks, we have a lot of them in the agricultural areas around here and things like that, and you really have the heart-to-heart conversation and say, look, we're talking about a way to solve this. Your kids have a path to citizenship, but you're gonna have to pay the penalty. You're not gonna become a citizen, and you're going to, but the risk of deportation will be taken care of. Unbelievable how they say, oh, that's what I came here for America for. I came here to better my kids' lives. I didn't come here for them. They came here for their kids. To me, that's something we should consider. But why we're considering that on the issue of citizenship, we first have to deal with the core issue of how we're going to secure that border. How are we going to secure the border in north, south, east, and west? And how are we going to deploy the assets and measure those deployments to make sure that that border is secure? And if you're telling me in 2014 we can't figure out a way to do that with our U.S. government ability, well then you're really not going to be able to do anything on the issue because you don't have the technology to secure the border. And I disagree with that. But so I offer that as some thoughts on it.
Okay.
Any suggestions we should focus on?
Only one, in that it's not part of the thing, but the people that come here pregnant just to have a kid here so it has U.S. citizenship and they go back home with that kid has to, that shouldn't, that's wrong. That whole function of it is wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. I mean, there's a constitutional underpinning to that. That all stems from the whole Civil War situation and
14th Amendment.
14th Amendment. So, and I'm very hesitant to start amending the Constitution. I get a little, that should be the, maybe we can solve it another way. Without that.
A young gentleman has a question.
Jess, yeah?
Do you think it's possible for this nation to be turned around?
Absolutely, Jess.
Good question.
Amen. Never give up. There is definitely room. There is still path on this runway that we're on to get this country and in the right direction and strong for generations to come. If I didn't believe otherwise, I would not be here today. And one of the reasons, if not the main reason why we're doing this, I got a 13 and 15-year-old at home, like we were talking about earlier, Autumn and Will. And Katie, I think Katie Hale is who I brought up to you. You know, that's why we're doing this. It really, at some point in time, it's no longer, when I held my daughter for the first time, I'll tell you, that was the moment where I realized, you're not here for yourself any longer. You're here for those guys. That's what it's all about. Yeah.
Is Social Security still solvent?
Now this is a great question that we've asked numerous folks in D.C. and Kathleen Sebelius, you may have known her from the Obamacare era. Well, we had a conversation on Social Security and Medicare, Medicare in particular with her. So when you use the term insolvent, they don't like that term. They don't like bankrupt. I use the term bankrupt because everything that I can see, it is. It's on a path to bankruptcy. 2033 for Social Security, 2023, 24 for Medicare. Now, are we going to allow it to collapse? We can't let that happen. We just can't let that happen. Put it in perspective. Social Security disability. You know when that goes bankrupt? Anybody know when that goes bankrupt?
This year.
Pretty close. January 1, 2016. Social Security disability is out of money. You'll have to see a 20% cut in disability benefits on January 2nd, 2016 for everybody who's receiving those benefits because Social Security is upside down in regards to Social Security disability. It's all part of Social Security. It's a little different than the Social Security that you're thinking of in retirement funds and those types of
Isn't
things.
that part of the problem, because that was originally part of the Social Security when it first started? They've added so many different addendums to it that it's
Growing and
too
growing and
many
growing.
appendages.
The original program was about retirement, FDR, it was about retirement. And then it's grown and grown, and it's gone SSI and Social Security Disability, and it was really designed to be the safety net for the catastrophic situations among us. And it's blossoming and it's growing.
Couldn't they put in a separate part? And
They did, I mean, they did, they kind of grew it, but it's all related to each other. And a lot of the people ask, well, Tom, you worry about the national debt, but why do you talk about Social Security as part of the national debt conversation? And the reason why is because a lot of that debt of the $18 trillion, $17.3 trillion, is borrowed from Social Security. Because it was generating a lot of surpluses, so there's a lot of IOUs. So if you can't pay back those creditors, how are you going to pay back Social Security? That's why you have to talk about the whole thing all the way together. So what are the solutions? That's the question. There's a few things. The good news, to Jesse's point, there's still time where we can say folks that are in Social Security and Medicare, because there's still room there. Not as much room on Medicare as Social Security. But you can say that folks that are in it, no change one iota. We can honor the commitments that they have received and are continuing to receive. You can actually do the math, and the number comes down at 45 years of age. Where anybody 45 and older, we don't need to change Medicare, Social Security. You receive the same thing. But we need to start making changes to people that are 44 and younger. And if we wait another year, that number probably next year when we do the recalculation, it's not going to be 45, because if we maintain the status quo, that's going to have to keep creeping up, 46, 47. And why is that important? Because, think about it. If you're 60, and we have done nothing, and now all of a sudden we got to immediately change the program, that's not right. I mean, you're 60 and you're going to retire in a couple years, but how are you going to, you planned on it, you banked on it. And now you don't have any time to change your plan. Guy that's like my age, 42, you tell me I may have to wait a little bit longer to get Medicare and Social Security because I'm living longer and I'm going to probably work longer. I'm willing to accept that if that means we're going to stabilize the programs and keep them here. So age adjustment has to be part of it. I'm even open to things like removing the cap on Social Security. You know, there's a cap right now on the contribution of Social Security. It's about $109,000 of wages. Anything above that, you don't contribute to Social Security anymore. I'm willing to open that conversation and do that, and it would stabilize Social Security.
So you support raising the retirement age?
Yeah, for those that are 45 and younger, yeah, I'd be opening to adjusting that retirement age, throwing it out there a little bit, and implementing it so that those that are 45 and older don't have to be impacted by that. They would still qualify at the age that they're set to qualify for now. Because it's just a fundamental math issue in regards to we're living longer, and the trust fund is upside down, and we have to do something because we can't maintain the status quo. Yeah, ma'am, in the back.
The other thing we need to change is don't touch Social Security anymore.
And don't go in and rob
Don't go
it.
in and borrow it,
Yeah.
and never pay it back.
Amen. I agree with that.
It'd be fine if it hadn't happened.
Yeah, you remember the old lockbox argument in the presidential debates from a long time ago? Yeah. And this is the whole conversation that we had a couple times with a couple of folks who were around during that debate. And what they said, and you'll appreciate this as mayor and as supervisor, when you have a surplus, you have your surplus funds, right? Your reserve account, your fund balance, right? If I remember my mayoral days correctly. They said, well, what we were facing is we had a ton of money coming into Social Security. And the question is, where are we going to put it? Are we just going to put it in the mattress, or the quote-unquote federal mattress, or where are we going to put it? And what they decided was, what is the safest investment that you can invest in? Federal Treasury T-bills, right? These guys as mayors and as supervisors, when they get their training from the comptroller, he will tell them, where we want you to put your money is into the government. Treasuries, very limited risk, zero risk. And they're like, well, we were told to do this. I go, well, I understand that, but you weren't told to borrow it for operation and maintenance. You weren't told to borrow it when you're going in the hole to $18 trillion and you have a real threat of the ability to pay it back. That's when you gotta say, time out, enough is enough, and quit the borrowing. That's the problem. Now they got grown accustomed to it. They didn't fix the problem, they didn't keep the government within a limited size, and they continue to just rely on that money as standard operating procedure. So the guys who defend themselves for getting Social Security into that situation, I understand what they're saying, but they didn't think it all the way through.
This sort of goes along with some things that they were saying, concerns about executive order reach, and particularly executive order. Barb says, I understand the President recently signed an executive order to allow people with limited terrorist connections easier access to gain entry to the United States. What can Congress do about this? And this is the first I heard about it, so I got a little curious. And Fox News was reporting that yes, the executive order does exist, and the exact phrasing was limited material support. Folks that have given limited material support in some cases might be eligible for asylum in the United States. So it's an asylum issue rather than
Yeah,
an issue.
because we did get this, a couple weeks ago this came out, I remember reading the reports on it. And to be honest, I don't have an update for you right now. That's you, is that you? I don't have an update for you. We're trying to get some clear answers as to why the President felt it was necessary to alleviate that terrorist connection. I don't know if there was a concrete example. What my gut tells me, and I shouldn't speculate, but there may have been some hot issues, individuals that they were trying to address because they wanted to get them under our control or something like that. I don't know, but we'll get to the bottom of it.
It would seem like after the Boston Marathon that we would be very sensitive to that sort of thing.
I would agree. I would agree. Why he's going down, that's why I'm giving the benefit of the doubt and saying there, for him to just unilaterally do it, it really caught me off guard. You know, what prompted this executive order that he issued? To me, it makes me question, was there something else going on there where they may be trying to get this on? So I'm just giving the President the benefit of the doubt. Maybe I shouldn't do that, and I'm the eternal optimist, and I trust people, and I do those things. But, you know, we're going to get to the bottom of it and get you an answer and see what's going on there. Because the alleviating, that goes back to border security. Goes back to whole immigration reform. That's the technology. We live in 2014. We should be able to identify, know the risk, and if you're on that risk list, sorry.
Just try getting on an airplane if you don't believe
Yeah,
that.
yeah, we see it all the time. See it all the time. And that's where you get in, we can have a conversation if you want about, you know, something I'm very sensitive to, and we're working on some reforms on the NSA, Homeland Security, and how much they're infringing on our civil rights. But at the same time we have that conversation, there's a lot of people in D.C. who are trying to make a lot of hay of just saying we should rescind all surveillance programs, we should just kind of undo all that. We can't get there. You need a balance. You need a balance because there are bad threats that are out there. There are bad guys within American soil and outside American soil, particularly outside of American soil. So balancing that and making sure we have a much more transparent system, something where there's a kind of a privacy advocate for U.S. citizens, if you would, with that his or her role is just to defend American citizens when it comes to the privacy issue. The courts, the NSA courts and everything that are there, making sure that's just not a rubber stamp process and that we get the details quicker. But what we can't do is you can't go so far that you say, okay, we're going to just disclose that to everybody, then the bad guys know what we're doing. You know, that's the whole thing about Ed Snowden. That's another issue that I think will continue to blossom as we go forward, because what happened there is way beyond just American citizens and everything else. It's there are some real dangerous things that happen there that I think time will tell. That could be a potential problem for us. Anyway, Jesse, you get the last word.
What?
You get the last word.
So, kind of a good topic. What do you think about abortion?
Ooh. Well, that's an easy question to end on right there. No, I'm pro-life.
Amen.
I do recognize the exception for rape, incest, and life of the mother. You know, and this is I mean, this is tough. I mean, that's a tough, fundamental question. And it's one of those issues that you wrestle with, and you just come to a conclusion, and that's how I feel, and that's where we're at with the issue. And we'll remain with the issue. And, you know, I hate to see this issue be utilized like I did see last time, you know, where this became, well, Tom, you're pro-life, so therefore you're against women. That's not the case. That's not the case. It is, let me share with you a personal story. Youngest of 12, born in 1971. My mom was 46. At that point in time, there were a lot of physicians and doctors, because in certain portions of the country, abortion was legal. And they were advocating to my mother, you're too old. Fortunate for me, I appreciate the decision she made. But I understand where she's coming from in that context. Very difficult, very difficult. So the question then becomes, and then you read Roe v. Wade, and you see what the Supreme Court justices were wrestling with. When does a life become a life, and when do you have that, recognition from the state that that's a life that needs to be defended? That's where they came up with the silos of the months and everything else. And that's a fair question and a fair debate we can have in the country. But at the end of the day, Jesse, this is something too that I think a lot of folks want to use it politically. And I think what we should be focusing on are areas where we can come together and agree on. And when you talk about, priority issues of the country, I do believe that we should be focusing on the economy, jobs, creating an environment upon which people have an opportunity in America again because of this debt crisis, this jobs crisis, and to me that's something that I think we can really come together as a country to unite on, but not to downplay the issue of life, not to downplay it.
Do you like to see people killing babies before they're even born?
No, and that's where it's a very tough issue, and just like I don't, you deal with mothers who are in situations that they find themselves having to make that decision or go down that path. Very, very, very emotional, and it's something that we shouldn't damn them or judge people in that way. Just it's our position, my position, your position, and we'll move forward. So, with that, I appreciate it. Thanks for coming out today. Thanks for introduce yourselves, everybody.
No.
Well, these are our eyes and ears here in the district. You got Joe Semplin, district director.
Nice to meet you. A lot of folks here are familiar faces, so I think I've seen a lot of folks here before.
And Sharon Murphy works out of the corning office, the front office face for it. So thanks for coming out, guys.
Thank you.